Ever wondered how different our world would be if World War II had never happened? Imagine a globe untouched by the seismic shifts of this monumental conflict. It's a provocative thought, isn't it? After all, this was a war that redrew global borders and reshaped societies. It altered the course of technology and economy, casting long shadows that still touch our lives today. So, what happened during those cataclysmic years? Let's dive into the cataclysmic events that unfolded during this pivotal period in history. September 1st, 1939, a date that marked the beginning of a global conflict unlike anything the world had ever seen. As the summer of 1939 drew to a close, the world was about to be plunged into a war of unprecedented scale and devastation. Germany, under the rule of Adolf Hitler, launched a full-scale invasion of Poland. Their superior military technology and tactics, known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War, led to a swift and brutal conquest. This act of aggression was a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles that had ended the First World War, and it shattered the fragile peace that had held since then. Europe was once again on the brink of chaos. Britain and France, the two major powers in Western Europe, were left with no choice. They had pledged to protect Poland's sovereignty, and Germany's invasion forced them to act. On September 3rd, just 2 days after the invasion began, Britain and France declared war on Germany. The world watched in trepidation as these events unfolded, unsure of what this meant for the future. The stage was set for a clash of ideologies, with nations across the globe choosing sides in the impending conflict. And so it began, a war that would consume the world for 6 long years. 1940 and 1941 were years of rapid expansion for the Axis powers. The world watched in stunned silence as the map of Europe was redrawn again and again in favor of these aggressive forces. In the spring of 1940, Germany launched a Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, against France. The French, still reeling from the scars of the First World War, were caught off guard. The defense lines crumbled, Paris was taken, and within 6 weeks, France fell. It was a swift and shocking victory that sent shockwaves through the Allied ranks. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Britain braced for its turn. The Battle of Britain had begun, marking the first major campaign to be fought entirely by air forces. The courageous Royal Air Force fought tooth and nail against the German Luftwaffe. Their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds became a beacon of hope in those dark times. In parallel, the Blitz raged on. German bombers targeted major cities, including London, in a relentless bombing campaign aimed at breaking the British spirit. Yet the indomitable will of the people held firm, their resilience echoing in the now historic phrase, "Keep calm and carry on." In 1941, the Axis powers set their sights further east, launching a surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. Codenamed Operation Barbarossa, it was the largest military operation in history, in terms of manpower and area of operation. The Soviets defended fiercely, their vast lands and harsh winters proving as formidable an enemy as their troops. These years were not merely a period of geographical expansion for the Axis powers. It was a time of ideological spread, of fear and uncertainty, of the world holding its breath as it teetered on the brink of a new and terrifying era. By the end of 1941, the world was truly at war, with the Axis powers seemingly unstoppable. However, 1942 and 1943 saw the tides of war begin to turn. In the vast, brutal landscapes of Russia, the Battle of Stalingrad raged on. This was not a mere skirmish between armies, but a colossal face-off between two empires, two ideologies, two titans of the 20th century. Stalingrad was the site where Adolf Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich met its icy end. As the German Sixth Army was surrounded and finally surrendered in early 1943, it marked the first major defeat of Hitler's forces on land. The victory boosted the morale of the Allied forces and was a significant turning point in the war. Simultaneously, far from the frozen wastes of Stalingrad, the Pacific Ocean was the stage for the Battle of Midway. The United States, still reeling from the attack on Pearl Harbor, was ready for a showdown. And what a showdown it was! The American forces, using superior intelligence and tactics, managed to sink 4 of Japan's aircraft carriers, dealing a blow to the Japanese Navy from which it would never fully recover. The Battle of Midway proved to be the turning point in the Pacific War, shifting the momentum in favor of the Allies. Meanwhile, in the sun-drenched landscapes of Italy, another turning point was brewing. The Allies invaded Italy in 1943, marking the beginning of the end for the Axis powers in Europe. The Italian campaign, as it came to be known, was a long, hard slog, but it eventually led to the downfall of the fascist regime in Italy and the surrender of its forces. In the crucible of war, these 3 events, Stalingrad, Midway, and the Italian campaign, played a pivotal role in changing the course of World War II. They not only marked the turning of the tide, but also heralded the beginning of the end for the Axis powers. These were the years that tested the resolve of nations, where the course of the war began to shift. 1944 and 1945 were the final chapters of this global conflict. A time of decisive action, a time when the world held its breath, waiting for the outcome of a war that had shaken the very foundations of human civilization. In June 1944, the Allied forces embarked on one of the most significant military operations of the Second World War, the invasion of Normandy, also known as D-Day. Thousands of troops stormed the beaches of France, marking the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. The tide was turning and the Allies were pushing back. Yet, the road to victory was not easy. As winter fell, the Battle of the Bulge erupted in the dense forests of the Ardennes. This was Hitler's last-ditch attempt to halt the Allied advance. A desperate and bloody struggle that tested the resilience of all involved. But despite the harsh conditions and fierce fighting, the Allies prevailed. By spring 1945, the fall of Berlin was imminent. The once formidable Nazi regime was crumbling under the relentless onslaught of the Allied forces. The Soviet Red Army swept into the city, signaling the inevitable defeat of Hitler's Third Reich. But across the globe, another battle was reaching its climax. In the Pacific, the United States had made the fateful decision to deploy a weapon of unprecedented power. In August 1945, atomic bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was unimaginable, the human cost, heartbreaking. It was a grim reminder of the destructive potential of human ingenuity. Finally, the moment the world had been waiting for arrived. Germany unconditionally surrendered in May, followed by Japan in September. The world was at war no more. It had been a long, brutal journey, filled with sorrow and sacrifice. But the fighting was over. The dust began to settle, and amidst the ruins of war, humanity started to pick up the pieces. With the unconditional surrender of Germany and Japan, the world could finally breathe again. In the aftermath of World War II, the world was forever changed. The fires of conflict, though quelled, left deep scars on the face of the globe, and the echoes of their impact still resonate in our current era. The devastation brought about a fervent desire for peace. Thus, in 1945, the United Nations was born. An international organization, the UN was created with a hopeful vision to prevent such a war from ever happening again. It sought to promote peace and cooperation among nations, to solve international problems, and to encourage respect for human rights. However, the end of the war also marked the beginning of a new tension, the Cold War. It was a prolonged state of political and military tension between two superpowers that emerged from the ashes of World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union. This was not a battle fought with bullets and bombs, but rather with ideologies and influence. It was a chessboard of global politics, where each move could potentially tip the balance of power. But let's circle back to our journey through the Second World War. We've navigated through the outbreak in 1939, the expansion between 1940 and 41, the turning point from 1942 to 43, and the endgame between 1944 and 45. We've seen the rise and fall of powers, the human cost of war, and the ceaseless quest for supremacy. Each phase of this conflict brought about shifts in the global landscape, influencing the course of history and the world as we know it. From the ashes of destruction, new alliances were formed. old ones were shattered, and the map of the world was redrawn. And thus, we see how World War II, a devastating global conflict, has shaped the world we live in today. A world that we hope will never see such a war again.